While the X-Men have created quite a long-lasting legacy for themselves, they were bound to retire and settle down in their old ages at some point. Marvel surely accounted for this future, and in fact, the comic studio went one step further and put this idea on paper in 2008. Created by Chris Claremont, the GeNext comics introduced us to the children of the iconic X-Men, such as Cyclops, White Queen, Beast, and so on, and also shed light of what these superheroes of the past were up to in the present day. So without further ado, let us look at the GeNext comics and explore the lives of the X-Men once they settled down and had kids. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. GeNext, a glimpse into the X-Men's legacy. Over the past few decades, Marvel Comics has made an attempt to deliver content based on what fans would like to see, and GeNext is the perfect example of them catering to our needs. In fact, this project was fan-voted before it got into Chris Claremont's hands, who understands exactly what the audience would like and then came up with a striking storyline for the same. The GeNext comics shed light on the X-Men in the scenario that the Marvel Universe aged in real time, wherein the X-Men enter their 50s while the New Mutants also seem to be in their mid-30s. With most of our well-known mutant heroes retiring, Chris introduces us to a new age of superhero, the GeNext. As the first issue of this comic kicks off at the Xavier Institute, we receive some insights into how this school was one of the most closely held secrets on Earth. As Laura Kinney trains a new batch of students, including Pavel Rasputin, Olivier Raven, Becca Monroe, Rico, and No Name, she tells them all about Professor Xavier's invaluable contribution to the Institute. While Pavel is the grandson of the first-gen X-Men Colossus, and Olivier is the son of Gambit and Rogue, Laura still educates them on the history of the X-Men and tells them about Professor Xavier's role in bringing their dreams to life. She then starts training the students individually and reprimands Becca Monroe for her fighting style. As they continue training in the Danger Room, Rico and Olivier step up to Becca's defense and ask Professor Kinney to back off and cut her some slack. Soon enough, Laura turns her attention to them, and Olivier puts up a good fight and even earns some praise from his teacher. As all the members of the GeNext take turns tackling Laura, No Name approaches Becca and reprimands her for giving up while all her friends continue to fight for her. The two of them get into an argument, and Becca tells No Name that she is too scared when Rico takes it upon himself to tackle Laura on his own. While the kids battle it out with Laura, an older version of Hank and Cece, or of Hank and Cease, observe them from afar and comment on how they've grown up amid a lot of tragedy. Much to their surprise, Nico and Olivier work in cahoots to defeat Laura, and Nico distracts her while Olivier turns invisible and attacks her when she least expects it. As the session comes to an end, Laura takes her leave while the others check up on Becca. She soon rushes out of the room after stating that she wants some time to herself, and we see her sit all by herself in the changing room as she questions her decision to join the Institute. She had come here in the hopes that the X-Men would help her understand her bodily changes, but her train of thought is interrupted by Olivier, who rushes after her to check up on her. While she wants to let him in the room, she doubts whether he would see her for what she is or view her as a monster, and Olivier takes her silence as a sign to take his leave. As she laments over her condition, she gets a call about a meeting with the headmaster, and she then stresses over whether they'll kick her out of the Institute. However, her troubles come to a momentary halt as she runs into Rico, who drags her out of her bubble and takes her on a fun trip to Westchester County town. As we go back in time, we learn that they had been frequenting this town when they were kids, and this was one of the few places where mutants could hide in plain sight. While No Name, Rico, and the others discuss what's in store for Becca, Olivier tries to grab her attention and dance with her. Becca's superpowers help her overhear their conversation, but she lets loose for some time and has a fun time with Olivier until a random stranger starts bothering her. As he towers over her and even leans in for a kiss, Becca pushes him away and turns into her mutant form to teach him a lesson. While he backs off, Becca immediately panics over how others might perceive her now that she has revealed her true self. But this doesn't doesn't bother the others in the slightest. As the issue ends, Olivier assures her that they will always stand by her and seals this promise with a kiss as she breathes a sigh of relief. As the next issue kicks off, No Name searches for Pavel all over the place, only to find him hiding under a car's hood as he works away on the vehicle's mechanism. While she convinces him to come to class, he seems quite fixated on the task at hand and declares that he has already had good instincts and doesn't see any point in educating himself. He believes that he can do better things with his time, while No Name points out the irony of him fixing a car only after having educated himself on how it works. But her logic ends up falling on deaf ears, as Pavel doesn't seem slightly interested in attending class. But No Name refuses to give up on him yet. As they continue bickering, No Name declares that he is driving her crazy, only for him to pull her in for a kiss. As they share a moment, No Name asks him why he kissed her, and he jokingly replies that it was his instinct. As this issue progresses, we notice that it has a different comic styling than the others, and that the comic panels are layered on top of Pavel's sketches of the Institute, his peers, and the older X-Men. While these sketches tell a story, let's get back to our GeNext members as they start another day at the Institute. After sharing a moment with No Name, Pavel meets with the other boys on his team for a little chat before they part ways to focus on their own things. While Becca and Olivier face each other in a punching match, Pavel makes his way to No Name with a bouquet of flowers. In a sweet gesture, Pavel further reveals that he had planted an entire garden full of the same flowers right outside No Name's window, so that she can be surrounded by them even after this bouquet dies. While she's quite touched by his thoughtfulness, No Name's phone rings at the same second, and she kicks Pavel out to attend to it. While Pavel rushes to his peers to tell them about this call, they worry that No Name might break curfew to meet this caller in town. As Becca rushes after No Name, she asks the guys if they are joining her, and the entire GeNext team ends up breaking curfew rules to visit the Salem Center. Since No Name has a head start, she reaches the location before the GeNext team catches up with her and immediately lands into trouble with one of the Shockwave Riders. The Shockwave Riders were known to be one of the X-Men's most formidable opponents, and one of them corners No Name just when Pavel and the others make their presence known. While the five of them could have faced one of the Shockwave Riders alone, their adversary reveals that he didn't come by himself, and his entire gang emerges from the shadows. These riders were essentially superpowered mutants with access to advanced technology that allowed them to boost their natural abilities, and Olivier soon remarks on how his parents and grandparents used to fight them in the past. They devise a strategy to share their powers to defeat them and free No Name from the clutches of the first rider. While Rico is considerably weakened by their attack, Becca proves to be a tough nut to crack as she displays her abilities in full force to tackle the riders. In the meantime, Pavel goes after the rider who captured No Name and orders him to let her go. The rider doesn't take kindly to this threat, and he attacks them both at once while the Xavier Institute members and other forces, including the federal law enforcement agencies, pull up to the scene. The riders scramble at the news of their arrival, leaving the GeNext members to deal with the federal officer. As they all check up on each other, the higher-ups at the Institute seem to be at a loss as to how the riders knew No Name. We learn that she was a foundling mute, but her abilities had not manifested by the time the Institute found her, and she barely had any memories of the past. As they continue to delve into No Name's past, they wonder whether she truly doesn't remember anything, or if she's gifted at hiding secrets while Pavel decides to pay her a visit. He checks up on her and realizes that she's pretty alright, which prompts him to go ahead and hand her a sketch that he had made on his own. As No Name sees this sketch that depicts her as a stunning angel, she scrambles out of the room with Pavel close on her heels as the comic issue comes to an end. The third issue, Flight, kicks off with some panic at the Institute as No Name is declared missing. Becca immediately starts beating herself up for not noticing her roommate slip away while the federal police forces show up to look for her. As it turns out, her disappearance was a major security concern, as it posed a potential metahuman security threat, and Institute veterans soon interviewed Becca, Rico, Pavel, and Ollie in the hopes that they might know something. While SHIELD agent Val Cooper interrogates Becca, the young girl wonders why they are treating No Name as if she were an enemy, and suggests that maybe she ran away because she was scared. As Agent Val, Henry, and the other elders come together, they comment on how the kids view them as the bad guys now. Henry especially gets a kick out of this, and laughs about how history keeps repeating itself, while the others stress about No Name's disappearance. Scott Summers ends up expressing his distress over having to be the one to make phone calls to the parents, and he seems pretty done fun with being the bearer of bad news. He further blames himself for failing to protect these children who were placed under his care while Becca and the others discuss the situation outside. They try to think of ways in which they can contribute, and the others ask Rico if he could find her. While Rico initially states that they don't need to find her if she left on her own, the others tell him off for not helping a friend in trouble, and he finally gets on board. He suggests that they should start with something that only they might know about her, and the scene soon shifts to Olivier and Pavel as they share a conversation in a library. They try to brainstorm ways to find No Name, and they share their worries while Hank oversees Becca's training process. With the rest of the team present, Hank first asks Becca to fly around the room, but she loses control and almost tears the room apart. The room's compensator system crashes due to the power overload, and Laura tries to save Becca but fails to do so. In the middle of such an extreme power surge, Hank, Rico, and the others also scramble to Becca's rescue, but the power seems to have a mind of its own. Becca's eyes soon light up with a strange power before she falls to the floor, and things finally get back in control as Hank orders every one of them to visit the infirmary. As they head for a health evaluation, their troubles escalate tenfold as the place's arms go off and indicate a level 1 security threat. While Hank declares that he'll deal with the threat, Laura seems to be one step ahead of him, but he asks her to accompany the kids to the infirmary instead. However, she pays no heed, and the 4 kids are left behind alone to deal with the situation however they please. They view the security alert as an opportunity to sneak out and look for No Name, and Ollie asks Rico to sneak out and head for the hangar. Rico uses his full-spectrum vanish abilities to turn them all invisible, and they successfully sneak out and reach the hangar without being caught. Meanwhile, the Institute's heads gather at the main office, where they learn that the security alert went off due to Black Marvel, an evil X from an alternate dimension. The officials continue to stress about this, which gives the kids the perfect chance to leave the place. While they worry about the hangar being on lockdown, Olivier locates the X-Men's original Blackbird and reveals that he's worked with Megan for months to restore it. While he gets in the driver's seat with Rico, they divide up the responsibilities, and Rico focuses on keeping them invisible while Becca provides them with the energy they need to take off. They soon set off, but the issue comes to an end when Becca asks them to land as soon as possible since she really needs to go to the washroom. In the next issue, Hot Pursuit, the team locates a local airport in Willett Park and uses their abilities to disable all alarms to land their invisible aircraft. As Becca rushes out of the plane in search of a bathroom, the rest of them check the place out in search of some food. They continue discussing the situation and realize they may have landed in a lot of trouble at the Institute, but their search for No Name trumps all other worries. They do believe that they have an advantage when it comes to finding her, since their professors don't really know No Name the way they do. Rico further emphasizes the point that they haven't even bothered to think like her, and they discuss the possibility of her moving across the West Coast. As Olivier and Rico continue with their theories, Pavel wonders where Becca is, and they look for her, only to find her passed out in a corner. As Pavel picks her up, we learn that they used to be quite close, and that his grandmother even helped raise Becca. While the training seems to have gotten to her, the rest of the guys focus back on the plan as Olivier reveals that he has a wad of cash in case of any trouble. They soon take off again, and Olivier shares some cool trivia about the original Blackbird and the X-Men who used it before them. As they carefully make their way through the skies, they briefly worry about what might be happening back at the Academy in the wake of the Omega Alert. Olivier tells them that his dad referred to this security alert as the end of everything alarm, and that the mansion was nuked the last time it went off. He further tells them about the strange light he saw in Becca's eyes back in the danger room, but they don't pay much attention to this and focus on their mission to find No Name. They soon land in an old coastal community called Bisola, a quiet town that had become home to several mutants over the years. Interestingly, Olivier was born and raised here, and his mother, Rogue, was even buried here. He considered this place to be his home, and he took the rest of the team to his old house to rest and get some food. While the others freshened up, Olivier fixed up some breakfast for them while Rico asked him questions about his father, Gambit. Olivier revealed that they barely stay in touch, and Rico pointed out the fact that their entire team seems to lack family support, and they should just stick with each other. While Olivier remarks on this supposedly cheerful thought, he jokingly emphasizes how Rico is truly his best friend when Becca finally wakes up from her nap. She seems quite confused about her whereabouts, and the team gather around for breakfast as they bring her up to speed. After taking a couple of hours to shower and catch their breath, the team sets out on foot to continue their mission. Olivier seems to be a bit lost in his thoughts, and he confides in Rico as they wonder about the consequences of their action. While Ollie stresses about Scott and Emma kicking them out of the Institute, Rico assures them that they will be alright, and that the X-Men of the past must have also faced situations like these. While they have now disbanded, Ollie believes that they still need the X-Men around, even if he didn't particularly enjoy growing up in that environment. Meanwhile, Becca and Pavel are walking by each other's side when she senses somebody following them, and Rico makes fun of this by referring to it as her spidey sense. Becca seems quite uncomfortable as she reminisces about living in the Savage Land when Rico declares that his scanners have finally done the work and located No Name. They slowly make their way to the target amid Becca's claims about being followed, and they finally locate No Name surrounded by a bunch of Shockwave Riders. As Pavel loses his cool and lunges off the roof to save her, No Name holds him back and assures him that these people are her family. While one of the riders raises his eyebrows at the X-Men's kids being present, Becca and the others realize that this is a trap and they prepare to fight them. Olivier faces the raiders head on and even promises to kick their butt the same way his dad would defeat them back in the day. In the meantime, Becca struggles to defend herself, and Pavel finds himself in a tricky spot as he tries to free himself from a trap. As No Name watches her friends struggle, she asks the riders to let them go and emphasizes how they're all her friends. To make matters worse, Becca's fears prove to be true, as Shadow X, a team made up of the dark reflections of the original X-Men, make their appearance and declares that they had been chasing them for quite some time. This team consisted of villains such as Black Marvel, Dark Beast, Dark Angel, Iceman, and Cyclops, and they seem to be quite confident about defeating the young kids as this issue comes to an end. In the final issue of the comic, Call Us GeNext, we get some insight into the Shadow X team's appearance. It's revealed that they were lost when the Sentinels turned this island into a funeral pit. However, they've managed to rebuild it and make a striking return, and they seem to want No Name for some reason. While the kids discuss their strategy, Shadow X members declare they will let them live if they hand No Name over to them, and that this deal is not subject to any negotiation. They seem to be quite eager to get their hands on No Name, and they barely take any time to summon her with the help of their abilities. Olivier immediately jumps to her defense, but he's struck down by Jeanine Grey, who tells him that he might show some potential, but is certainly not in the same league as them. While Pavel fights against an evil McCoy, Becca deals with Dark Angel and almost ends up falling from a great height, with Olivier rushing to her rescue. The young mutants have a hard time fighting against the powerhouses of yesteryear, and Olivier even ends up being the victim of a freeze attack as he gets stuck within a huge shard of ice. While Rico comes to his rescue, Becca corners Jeanine Grey with a fresh surge of energy flowing through her veins, and even gets the best of her. However, Jeanine uses a telepathic attack to manipulate areas of Becca's cerebral cortex, and leaves her writhing in pain as she redirects her attention to No Name. She declares that they can leave now that they have their prize, while Olivier and the others recover from the intensity of these attacks. As Ollie catches his breath, a flashback tells us that he's hated losing in a fight, and that his mind ends up racing through several thoughts that lead him back to his family in any such situation. He ends up reminiscing about the good old days when his parents were helping Professor Xavier rebuild the island after the Sentinels destroyed it. But these happy times did not last long. Soon enough, the mansion was nuked, and Olivier's mother sacrificed herself while trying to save them all. While Megan Frost stuck by Olivier's side during these times, he didn't expect to see her in his imagination, and he recovered from the Shadow X's attack to find himself face to face with her. She reveals that she sensed his pain and showed up to see if she could help him in any way. However, they seem too far off, and Megan reveals they can't get any assistance in time. She then asks him to be well and safe, and her vision soon dissipates as Olivier opens his eyes. While the rest of the team recovers, they see Olivier conversing with ghosts, and Becca seems annoyed over them not being of any help during fight. Rico simply asks her to have some faith, while the scene shifts to Wicked and gives us some insight into her life. She used to have a wonderful life until the Sentinels attacked her home and turned everything to dust. But she somehow survived and continued to live on this ghost island. In the meantime, Janine Gray pressures No Name into sharing some crucial information with her, but the latter refuses to be of any help. Janine further stresses that entire worlds could be destroyed if she doesn't cooperate, and No Name loses her cool and goes in for a fight. As she throws a punch at Janine, McCoy immediately restrains her, while Roberto, aka Iceman, freezes her on the spot. While Iceman offers to break her, Janine tells her that she only wishes to tame No Name until she gives in and shares the information they need. She then approaches No Name and tells her that it will only get worse for her if she keeps resisting, while Becca prepares for a sneak attack. Unfortunately, Janine's senses pick up on Becca's movements, and she lashes her down while declaring that they can't take her by surprise. No Name takes this moment to strike Janine down, and she further tells her that she can't actually handle all of them at the same time. As a fight breaks out again, Rico, Oli, and Pavel step in to deal with the other Shadow X members, while Becca and No Name deal with Janine Gray. With shots of energy blasting left and right, No Name takes her chance and switches bodies with Janine Gray while everyone else is preoccupied. By switching bodies with her, No Name gains access to her telepathic abilities, while Janine begs the others to stop her before she fries all their brains. Surprisingly, Cyclops comes to their rescue and helps them defeat the other Shadow X members, while No Name deals with Janine. After a long climax, the Shadow X members lie on the floor and accept their defeat, while Becca, Rico, and the others celebrate their victory. While they seem relieved to make it out alive, No Name fakes Janine's voice, and their faces turn pale as they realize that their friend might still be in trouble. However, this turns out to be a prank, as No Name declares that they are easy to fool, and she then reveals the truth behind the incident. As it turns out, Janine wanted something from inside No Name's head, and their minds ended up merging for a brief moment, until she resisted the attack and took Janine by surprise. While Olivier questions the information, No Name declares that she doesn't wish to talk about it, and that she's left that behind in her past. She seems quite keen on moving on, and Olivier does not press her any further as they take a moment of relief and tie up the Shadow X member. After having such a long day, they wonder what their next step should be as they realize that they've gotten themselves into some serious trouble at the Institute. As the comic series comes to an end, Becca declares that the trouble was worth it as they regroup and await their next mission together. Marvelous verdict. To wrap things up, the GeNext comics offered quite an interesting peek into the future of the Xavier Institute, and Chris Claremont more than stepped up to make this storyline as intriguing as possible. He's introduced us to a horde of fresh characters with striking personalities and a lot of room for growth, and we hope you enjoyed exploring their lives as much as we did. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.